and you can't piss on hospitality. I won't allow it!
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. You take them to bed with you, too, and I don't believe in group sex. If my father discovers you here, he'd cut off your little nuts and eat them. Me, Grandpa, stand here!
Do you want some, Joshua?
Hey everyone, welcome back to Sleazoids, the podcast where we go down the rabbit hole of 20th century genre fare, from the most influential canon classics to the trashiest exploitation films we can get our hands on, and invite you to tag along in helping us create a canon of sleaze. Each week is a double feature, Grindhouse style, where we discuss two films loosely related by subject, genre, actor, filmmaker, or franchise. And at the end of each episode, along with our honorary Sleazoids, which you can become by subscribing on Patreon, we decide on the official ratings and rankings for every film that we cover. Patreon subscribers also get an on-air shout-out and 2 bonus episodes a month, which there are a few of now.
Yes.
We got 2 or 3 bonus episodes available for you guys, so you got a back catalog for subscribers. So for the warm feeling inside of supporting the show, we recommend becoming a fellow Sleazoid over at patreon.com/Sleazoids podcast. Oh, and I guess all those bonus episodes. That's the other.
That'd be a good perk.
There's your plug for the week. Oh wait, no, iTunes. I keep forgetting the iTunes one. Guys, you guys have been listening for a little bit. We know there's a bunch of you over on iTunes. I've seen you. We
know.
Yeah, I see those stats. If you guys, while you're listening on iTunes, could just head on over and give us a good old rating and even a review, that would be awesome for us. Helps us climb the ranks over there, and we will read your review on the show.
Yes.
When we see it. Thanks again for tuning in for another week. Free listeners, you guys would have last heard from us 2 weeks ago.
Yes, we did.
And 2 weeks ago, we had good old Danny Bose on.
Oh, yeah.
He brought with him he brought on with him a Michael Douglas double feature of Basic Instinct and Black Rain.
Best flow in the 80s,
yeah.
Michael Douglas.
Oh, it was a real good time. So if you guys haven't checked that episode out yet, definitely go back and check that out. And going off of Danny's Paul Verhoeven selection, for patrons, you guys would have heard from us a week ago where we talked The Terminator and RoboCop.
Yes.
Which was I don't even need to tell you, those are some wild films to talk about. So for patrons, you guys would have heard us there. But this week we have another special guest on. We have Shannon, or Strucci Movies, for those of you who follow her excellent video essay series. Shannon, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, thanks for coming on. So you brought with you 2 very special films, neither of which I have seen, which is the first time someone's brought on 2 films I haven't seen.
Yeah, I've seen the doc, but I haven't seen the movie. Or before this, of course.
Yeah. So what films have you brought with you, Shannon, and why have you paired them together?
I brought the 1990, I think, film Troll 2. And the documentary that was made about Troll 2, like about 20 years later, called Best Worst Movie. And I paired them up because, I mean, it's a pretty natural pairing. It wasn't like that much of a stretch. It's a little self-explanatory. And I think they both inform each other a lot. It's fun to watch them as like a double feature.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And I think it's necessary to watch both. I don't think just watch the document. You can't really fully understand
what happened.
Yeah, you can't understand what happened because everything's taken. Not that the context helps that much, but all the strange stuff in context of because as is mentioned in the documentary, Troll 2 is a really terrible movie, but it's like competently made, but nothing makes it like. So you're looking at a film and it's shot well or fairly well, like low budget, whatever, and there are actors in it, and you can understand what's going, but it doesn't. Your brain just sort of locks up.
Yeah, it definitely helps because the documentary shows a lot of people who are very high on a special kind of experience, and if you haven't actually experienced it, that definitely helps you understand the sort of cultural phenomenon that it's turned into. So yeah, this was a really fun double to bring. I hadn't seen either, so it was really interesting. I had seen The Room, and I had heard its name mentioned in a similar light. So
yeah. I mean, you probably heard the meme, the "Oh my God,"
and
meme, right?
I had definitely seen the
big.
"Oh my God" clip on YouTube.
Yeah, that got pretty big on the internet. That's how I heard of it.
Yeah, I saw that years before I saw the movie, I think.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. I saw so many clips of the film before I watched it in its context, and I gotta say, like, watching it with its context was a whole different experience. It must be done. It's crazy.
It was a lot of fun.
Because there's a lot of stuff people don't even think to, like, bring up. There's a lot of weird homoerotic stuff in very, very small scenes. There's a lot of, because you can't condense it all down. Every couple of minutes, there's something really, really strange happening.
Yeah, and it's just like you don't know where their brains were when that thought began. It's truly mesmerizing.
This week, normally on the show, we break each film up into its own segment, and we talk about each separately, and we hope that together the two segments kind of bring us to a greater whole on why these were brought together. But these two films are so integral to each other and so interconnected that we felt separating them didn't make much sense for conversation, since a lot of conversations we're going to have surrounding Troll 2 are going to be conversations that are also in the documentary and that deserve to be had about the documentary as well. So we're going to enter one big segment this week, which is a little different for us, where we're going to be talking about both the 1990 film Troll 2 and the 2009 documentary about the making of Troll 2, directed by the child actor who starred in Troll 2, Best Worst Movie. So what do you say? Get into it?
Yes, let's do this.
Troll 2.
All right.
Goblins don't exist. Goblins don't exist.
And remember,
Dr. Corn, Dad, I'm sick!
they're eating her! And they're going to eat me!
Anyway, you'll have a lot of fun with clips of this one.
I can't wait to make the theme music
I
for
must
this.
do it. I must. There's so much. There's so many different.
Wait, what's the line about hospitality? You can't piss all over
hospitality. I won't allow it.
I won't allow it.
All right, so we are talking Troll 2, the 1990 horror film / eventual comedy film directed by Claudio Fragasso, the Italian filmmaker, sort of a B-movie filmmaker who made a lot of schlock in the 80s. I haven't investigated it myself, but I'm sure there's some stuff worth checking out.
Yeah, I think I might.
Because if there's anything we're going to say about Troll 2, it's not poorly. I mean, we'll define directed maybe, but it's not a poorly made film. Shannon mentioned before we started the show that it is a surprisingly competent film, especially considering this phenomenon as the worst movie ever. Because
on a technical level, there's some pretty cool parts in it.
Yeah,
honestly.
The cinematography is really not bad. Some of the design work isn't bad. It's just it is I would say it's a baffling film in execution and maybe in terms of script.
Yeah, the dialogue especially is just like an American person did not write this.
So we're talking
clear.
We're talking this film, and we're also going to be talking in this segment about the documentary about the making of Troll 2 Best Worst Movie that was directed by the child actor who starred in Troll 2, and there's a lot of interesting nuggets of information about the making of Troll 2 in that film, and which we'll describe, which will help us kind of unravel the actual film itself. Because I didn't know that until I watched the documentary, and it actually clarified for me hugely what's happening in this film. Was that the entire crew was Italian, and that it was two Italian filmmakers, both the director and the screenwriter. And is the screenwriter his wife?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so they wrote an English language, American specifically. They tried to make a very American exploitation horror film about the family.
Yeah, like
the
Claudio
family.
is even like, no, this is how Americans talk.
Yeah,
I know how Americans talk.
Yeah, and that the actors were like, do you want us to make it more natural in the dialogue? And he's like, no, you're going to say these exact words, this is America.
This is American.
And that will clarify for anyone who watches Troll 2, either if you have seen it or if you're going to watch it after you hear this.
Yeah.
That should give you a good lens to view what is happening here and might make it a little less baffling to you.
For real. And just before we get into kind of the plot and maybe specifically the lead guy.
Yeah,
as
the
well.
plot. Yeah.
Plot. I found it interesting when they're doing the opening credits. The director, it says that it's directed by a Drake Ford, not Claudio.
I didn't even notice that. Shannon, do you have any
insight
to that?
on that? Because I couldn't find it.
My assumption is like we don't want to put an Italian guy's name on this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I mean, for real, if distributors or whatever, like, oh, this is not an Italian, it's not an art film, it's not a foreign film. We want people to, because I mean, that's the whole thing too. Is there are no trolls in the movie.
Yeah,
but they marketed it. There was a film called Troll. That I think had.
And this film has nothing to do with it, right? That's the key.
I think the first one has Sonny Bono in it.
Really?
I think that it's like a crappy horror movie with trolls or whatever. I've never seen it. I'm never gonna see it.
But these ones are not trolls. These are specifically goblins, and the film was supposed to be called Goblins.
I mean, I think it was originally called Goblin, and I think it was probably some studio marketing thing of people recognize the film Troll. We're going to call it Troll 2. And obviously the cover it's not Michael Stevenson, I think his name is, the kid actor, is not on the cover.
Who's the kid on the cover?
Right. That's right.
The cover has nothing to do with the movie.
Amazing.
They just wanted. That was just their genius marketing.
You what?
This was just genius marketing. They were like,
they wanted to get the movie seen.
Yeah, that's
and then unsuspecting people being like, "Oh,
what
Troll 2.
Yeah.
I guess I'll blind check that out." And then they get this, which is super interesting. So I guess let's get into the actual meat of the film.
Some of the plot, I guess.
Hold on. Let me break this down.
This is going to be difficult for us compared to other movies.
So I actually, the screenwriter who talks about the film in her documentary actually made sense of the plot more to me. Because watching the movie, I couldn't make sense of what was happening.
The vegan thing?
Yeah.
Or the
and then she was like,
thing?
I moved to America and I had all these annoying vegetarians telling me to become a vegetarian. So she made a movie where there is these vegetarian goblins who just look vaguely like people, but really creepy people.
Yeah, one specifically has like wide, methed out eyes.
Yeah, and they are just going to disintegrate the American family by literally turning them into vegetation that they can then eat. By feeding them green food that turns them into vegetables.
Yeah,
and that's the main thrust of it. Yeah. But there's also a grandpa who's dead but alive.
And has
from the very beginning, like from the opening moments.
His ghost grandpa comes in the mirror, but he's in the wrong room. But then he's there with
Grandpa.
Grandpa Seth.
And he has like odd powers. It seems like all his powers, every single time he's about to give the kid like some time to think of a plan or whatever, he's always like, you have 30 seconds or you have 1 minute. I'm like, why? No one's established how, like, are you just giving him 30 seconds? Like why don't you give him more time? He's your grandson.
There's no stakes. The goblins aren't chasing him now or anything.
You just froze time, man. Is that just the limit to your power? But the movie never even bothers to acknowledge it. It's fantastic.
But where do they travel to? Because there's the
Nilbog?
kid, there's just the very traditional American family. There is the nuclear family. There's the young boy, there's the sister, there are the two parents, and for some reason the mom's favorite song is row your boat. I was so confused. I was like, why? Like, that is definitely what an Italian thinks of an American mom.
Yeah. She's a good old wholesome American song. Row your boat.
But why are they traveling to Nilbog? Is there something about it?
Because when you vacation, you trade. It's like a transfer student, but with houses. It doesn't make any sense. Because a creepy goblin family comes to their house, and they go to Nilbog.
Oh, so that's the goblins at the end. Oh, I'm gonna figure out what this movie was about
just
by talking about it.
I've seen this movie a bunch of times. It's just that the family. You find it's like, oh, they were goblins too. They have the little thing on their face.
Somehow I totally missed another family staying in their place
because they have like that little, like each of them have like a little scab on their face looking thing, and it's apparently they're goblins. Like a 4-leaf clover or something. Yeah. But it's because they're trading house. It doesn't make any sense, but they're like trading houses with this family, and that's how they're going on vacation or something.
Oh, okay. So
I forget how it's worded in the movie.
It's a cheapo vacation where you both just like go to a different place for a week.
Which definitely, I don't know if that's a thing where you just like trade houses.
Yeah, honestly, it sounds like a thing,
but it doesn't. It seems like I thought the way that they presented it was that it was a way so they didn't have to pay for it.
Yeah.
I thought that. So maybe it's a thing. I just wouldn't trust to trade with a stranger.
And they
family.
look so creepy, even at the beginning. That's kind of the creepy. The kid has like. I saw this a couple months ago, and I've seen it so many times I didn't rewatch it more recently. But it's like he's got like a newsboy cap on or something. The kid, I remember his face. So creepy.
Yeah, and then they just kind of have this. And then they just kind of have this weird moment where the family just kind of like the dad's trying to interact with them, even though they're clearly just leaving and not interacting with them at all. But he just for some reason continues. He's like, guys, like, hello. How are you? Like, he just keeps going. I'm like, dude, they're weird. Just leave. Just stop interacting with them. The pacing is so odd at times.
Yeah,
it's
so
crazy.
I guess we can get into some of that, too. So the dad is played by George Hardy. And George Hardy plays a very central role in the documentary since he seems the most sort of... I wouldn't say he's the most accomplished, but he seems very... He's the most joyful and the most... engaged with the experience of the cult phenomenon that came with Troll 2, which I guess we'll get into because the documentary, what happened with Troll 2 is it was so bad and that people discovered it because it was so bad and they kept sharing it with their friends and having one more person over and another person over being like, you gotta see this movie.
Parties formed, essentially.
And it seems like the way that the marketing worked, where they didn't explain what the film was, actually did work for the film because people discovered it and then they felt like they were in on a secret. Like they found some sort of secret society.
Yeah.
And they're like, I gotta get all my friends in on this. And then
so I'm not the only weirdo.
Obviously, with the rise of the internet where people can connect online and they can set up screenings and they can do this sort of thing, all of these people shared a love of watching this horribly terrible film. And it got obviously to the cast members, including George Hardy. And that's where the documentary kind of picks up is with the sort of legacy of this film and how, it never got released in theaters, but now it's playing on theater screens and on projectors just because of such, an experience of joy that it seems to be giving people, maybe not necessarily intentional, but one nonetheless.
Yeah. And I guess is like that's one of the biggest questions I think that comes with this film is like, if you're this entertained by it, is it all that bad? I mean, I don't know. I think the only reason that this was so entertaining was because they tried so hard, and you can tell. Like, there's a lot of passion involved in this film, even though it's not... I don't know. It's not wrapped around the biggest of talents.
Oh yeah, there was nothing more revealing for me in the documentary than when the director defended it, because I was like, that is how you know that, because he still thinks that it's a good film. He's like, I made a film, and
he says that.
Yeah. But that
I know when Margot's actress is comparing it to Casablanca, she's obviously sincere, or at least in some kind of, I don't know. I don't think she's being full of herself. I think she just has problems.
Yeah.
Claudio hopefully Claudio would understand why people think it's silly.
Yeah. It doesn't, I don't know if it makes clear maybe outside of the documentary, but in the documentary it didn't seem like he understood, because I don't think, I guess because it's American, he probably just doesn't see what's different than his Italian B movies.
Yeah.
And I think that's where it comes in, is that this sort of, the way that we
interact with it.
Yeah, the way that his story and style has translated to an American setting, I don't think he realizes the absurdity of it, which is maybe why he wouldn't immediately connect. Yeah. But obviously when he sat in those screening rooms and heard people laugh, and he was like, they're laughing at the unfunny bits.
Right, and that was something that...
It's kind of sad, actually.
Yeah, in a way. But he also seems... I mean, by the end, you can tell that he's much more aggravated than the rest of them, especially, and even at the beginning, because at the beginning it almost seemed like, because there was praise being given to him and the cast in the movie, whatever, he kind of accepted a little bit of the irony that was involved in the love for it.
Yeah.
But then as the film went on and the actors were like, oh, this was a ridiculous day on set and all this stuff, he just started to not enjoy himself anymore.
Oh, I loved in the documentary when the kid had them doing all the reenactments.
Oh, yeah.
That they went back to Novi and they were doing the reenactments. And all of the actors are redoing this shit. And obviously they get
that it's funny.
They get that it's funny now.
Yeah.
And so they're cracking up, just reenacting their scenes from their own movie, being like, this is so absurd, like thinking about this now. And the director is just being like, stop laughing! Stop laughing!
It's a
like,
serious moment. You're a serious actor. It's so good. It's so funny.
Yeah, so that was a great part. But yeah, the stuff with Margot is where the documentary gets a little... It veered into... it's probably... I don't know if it was the intent, but it gets a little just odd because she doesn't seem all there.
No.
She's clearly got like severe... Her and the store owner, although he seems a lot better than he was when they shot it.
Yeah.
The like guy who played the store owner.
Good character arc there.
He's very open. Yeah, he seems to be doing a lot better.
Yeah.
I was very disturbed. I wanted to kill that annoying kid. I guess he didn't realize the director of the movie that he's probably talking to is the kid.
Yeah, that was one of the best parts. Like, I'm like, dude, that guy's behind the camera right now. Oh man, that's hilarious.
He's being like, hey man, I genuinely almost murdered you.
Yeah, I genuinely almost force-fed you pudding until you died.
Yeah, and Margot and they are kind of making fun of her, but they're also just sort of presenting her as she was. I don't know. It's funny when she's like deluded into thinking that she was in Casablanca, but then later on when she's talking about the noises she hears and wanting to go away and stuff, it's like, oh,
yeah, it kind of turns into like some of the editing is almost like it felt like I was watching an episode of The Office or something. Like the
oh my god, yes,
right? Like when the one scene especially where they're doing the reenactment of the car scene,
and it zooms in on the
grandma, just like having a headache. That was The Office. Like the zoom in, the everything. I was like, this is a mockumentary. Like this is crazy. Like it's so bizarre that. That's a real documentary in a sense, and that this is a real movie that came to be.
It's interesting because obviously the kid, you feel like, or I guess he's not even a kid when he made the child actor who grew up and made the documentary. He obviously didn't know exactly what he was going to have when he started bringing people together. And what's interesting about the documentary is sort of the synthesis of obviously 20 years have gone by, and all of the people who were in this movie are in a lot of ways just as weird as the movie itself, and bringing them all together, and you get these really interesting interactions. And Margot is obviously a case, and the guy who was had some issues actually on set and has since got better. But even spending so long with George Hardy was really interesting because
he makes a big change throughout the film.
Yeah, well, because the director called him a dog, and and
you can tell there was some real animosity there.
Well, I felt more like it didn't translate well, but I think he was just calling him like a golden retriever. I did. Mr. Peanut Butter. Yeah, just happy and
I don't think that's what.
Yeah, he was just like, he's so happy, he's so energetic, and it is
willing to do whatever is asked of him in the sense of direction and stuff.
The choice to make him like so central to the documentary is a really important one and makes it a lot of fun to sit there and watch and experience all this with him. But what gets really interesting is when later on in the film he starts doing, he seems in on it as a bit of like this is a wacky thing I did back when, like, everybody check it out, look at me, this is so funny. But then he starts going to actual like nerd conventions with the film, and he feels so like lost at sea when he goes there, and he's doing autographs, and in one particular case there's actually nobody there who even knows about the film. That's the convention they do overseas, right? They go to the UK and just nobody there has even heard of the film.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know. Is that the one that he went to and nobody was in the UK?
In Birmingham.
Oh, okay.
In the UK.
Yeah, he goes over there and like he's being like, "Does anybody want my autograph?" Like, hey, have you heard of Troll 2? I was in a movie. Like, weird.
Yeah, and then I like when he starts,
but he slowly deflates. Right, you watch that happen, and you watch the dude who's such a joyous personality just like slowly be like figure out that like.
What's amazing too is he deflates with a smile on his face the whole time. Still, like even as his like kind of, I don't want to say because it's not like his dream is being crushed by any means, but it's almost like that fog of like excitement that he had about his newfound fame.
I feel like that guy
just
could be excited being tortured. Like I feel like
he'd be like, well, I mean, you guys mean well, so I mean, whatever, right? Like, yeah, he's just so happy and wholesome. But what I found interesting too is when he started talking to the old stars of like Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and that's what they do. They just for 20 years, they've just been the star of Nightmare on Elm Street 4, and that's all they did. And he kind of saw a sadness in that.
He feels sadness.
Yeah, because he's like, well, you know what? I actually have a dentistry that's doing well, and I progress every day, and they like me.
Really enjoys my
so
presence.
it's like, what am I doing? He kind of just has this epiphany, and it's really fascinating.
Yeah, Shannon, you mentioned the bit where he goes to the horror convention, which is one of the best moments in the documentary.
Yeah. I love the part where he looks at the dude that looks like Hellraiser. And he's just like, these people are weird.
He's like, this is fucked up. Like, who likes this shit?
This is creeping me out.
Honestly, dude, the people who like your movie do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how they discovered it. They were looking for more movies like that.
Yeah, exactly. Because at the end of the day, this movie is a horror film, I guess, right? I mean, it tries. Yeah.
Honestly,
there's some gore in it and stuff, too, which is pretty cool.
Having watched it for the first time for this show and hearing about, just word of mouth on it alone, I did not expect for this film to be as well made as it was. Yeah. That when I watched it, I was like, oh, this is like in another universe where they had someone do a redraft of the script. This is just an exploitation B movie. It's the exact kind of movie that we would talk about on this show.
For sure. It's just, I think the difference, I guess, is the logic behind the characters' decisions and stuff. Like, even in B movies, they make some stupid decisions. There's some wackiness, some craziness. But you get there's like a tone to understand. With this movie, it's like, they just missed the mark, it's obvious what they're going for isn't what comes onto the screen.
Yeah, I have one thing especially I need to bring up, because I think for me, this is going to be like a kind of a weird admission, but like I've never really gotten into like hate watching stuff like this. Oh, even when my friends in high school were like, come on over, watch The Room, it's so fun. Like, I never got the fun of it. Yeah. And I felt really bad because when I was watching this documentary, I saw all these people love it. And I was just like, for me, there's just never been like, I've never had that experience watching a movie like this. But there is one moment in this film that actually broke me and I lost my mind. Oh yeah. And it was the bit where the lady, the witch or she transforms into a seductress to try and seduce this teen. Yeah.
Oh god.
And she's got the black dress on and she's it's very revealing, and the camera is just going up and down it, being like, this teen, he's getting swept up. Yeah. But she's holding a corn cob. And my first thing was like, why is she holding a corn cob? And I thought that would just be like a total just random bit of like production design work where they were just like, whatever, hold a corn cob, do that. It's something. But no, it is integral to that scene, and
made corn cob sexy.
Yeah, and she takes the corn cob and she puts it away in her dress for later, and she walks into the RV with this teen. And then she throws her leg up and she's like, take a look at my leg. And then she pulls the corn cob out. And what does she say? What's her line? Does she say like, do you want, we should eat it, or we should, together?
It's second.
And now I'm not sure if the corn, because it's not a green corn cob, because throughout the rest of the film, all the other food is green, and that's what turns these people into vegetables. And I think she's trying to turn this dude into vegetable, but it just looks like a normal corn cob. But then she puts the corn cob in her mouth and his mouth, and they're making out with the corn cob, and the dude says, I love popcorn. Yeah. And I was really confused because I was like, there's no way that you can make popcorn out of a corn cob. Like, what is he talking about? Yeah. And then it kind of clicked in that maybe this is another Italians trying to understand American popcorn or something. Like, I was so baffled by this whole sequence. And then literal popcorn starts drowning them. And I was like,
just shooting everywhere.
And I had to sit there and be like, why?
Yeah.
Like, that was my only response. Like, I was actually broken. I was laughing hysterically. I couldn't believe it. But that for me was like the main moment in the film that did it. Some of the other stuff that there's YouTube clips like the oh my god.
Yeah.
Like that bit actually in the context of the film, especially with everybody else's performance being just as weird, it actually didn't stand out outside of like
you're right
to me.
And it also
it
cuts right away to the next scene, so it's like that scene has kind of that. It's what they're I think doing is like it's the climactic ending to the scene, you know? So they just ended it. So that actually kind of worked in tone. It's just like...
It's still weird.
It's so weird. Because like that, he goes for it. So you know that they directed him to hold the god, which is amazing. There's no way that the actor was like, you know what? I'm going to do this. I doubt it. Anyway.
Well, that's maybe the most baffling thing about the film is that you understand on every level, because people a lot of time get on actors' shit for their performances.
Yeah.
And you have to understand... A director is directing that performance.
Yeah.
And then they're being, yep, cut, we got it, and putting it into the film. So all of these performances, the director, I mean, maybe it also came from the fact that his English didn't get better until they filmed the documentary.
Yeah.
But like he was just looking to feel it in the performances, and it didn't really matter what they said.
Yeah.
And that creates a real cognitive dissonance when you're watching it, because what they're saying is total nonsense. But they are delivering it with feeling.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I lost it too at the bit with the dad, the hunger pains.
Oh my god! Because well, that is interesting because you like what were they going for? Clearly, they made you think that he's gonna beat his son with the belt. That seems obvious to me. Like it, because he unhooks his belt, and then the son says,
and there's
"What
suspense.
Are you going to do to me?"
Yeah, there's suspense.
Yeah, there's some clear. I'm like, oh shit's gonna get real in this movie, and then all of a sudden it's just no, we're just gonna have to tighten our belt for hunger pains, and the family's gonna.
But
have
I love
to
the
do
way he
same.
delivers it too. He's just like, I'm tightening my belt for hunger pains, and your mother
So
and your sister are gonna
serious.
have to do it too.
Yeah.
Like he's punishing him by tightening his own belt.
Do you realize what you've done?
Is there any part in the film, Shannon, that really stands out to you?
That broke your brain?
I mean, I guess you've watched this so many times that you might have some distance from it at this point.
I'm trying to remember the first time or the first couple times I watched it. I mean, the corn scene is up there. Doesn't the corn scene also start where he's like watching the TV and the like Bigfoot blasts off?
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about? They're watching some inexplicable show where there's someone in a Bigfoot costume that like takes like rockets up into the sky.
This is what Americans would watch.
Yeah, exactly.
One part that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough is where the little kid has to pee on the food and he's going, I must do it, I must. And it's so weird.
All he had to do was just like
knock the food out of their hands.
Like anything else, but I must do this. I must.
Or like warn them, or there are a lot of, and then like a lot of the stuff towards the end. So, and the scene where they're trying to force feed him. There's a skateboard in the attic of the church.
Oh yeah.
What?
Yeah, it falls. And then that's how he gets caught. Yeah.
I like the fact. What is it? His dad is like when he sees that Nilbog is goblin spells backwards. George Hardy is reading like a vegetarian cookbook or something. That's really weird.
Yeah,
and the scene where the guy gets in the car with the cop, and the cop's really creepy. They're just like that whole cop so strange.
Oh, he's
just
funny.
a lot.
I forgot about
we
the
got
cop.
sandwiches.
Yeah,
such a great line.
Yeah, and I love when he's reading, because you mentioned the cookbook bit where he's reading like the vegetable or vegetarian cookbook. There is a very distinct, like extreme close up on the title of that book. And I was like, oh, this is a really important thing. Yeah. And then it never comes back.
And then, essentially.
Well, they're vegetarian goblins.
Yeah. Which I gotta say, I kind of got it. Not because I think it was just me understanding what this director was going for, but before I watched the film, I was reading just a couple of reviews on Letterboxd or whatever, and one person said that they thought it was something that was actually for vegetarian. I don't know why, because I think it's very anti-vegetarian, and I mean the screenwriter said it was, so I mean there you go. But then so when I watched it and I was seeing all these kind of, like they turn them into plants and then they eat them, they do all this, I'm like, this guy hates vegans.
Yeah.
That's what this is about. This dude just
Pretty much, that is the core of the movie. Family is important, and vegetarians suck.
Yeah. Eat burgers.
And especially those...
No, a double-decker bologna sandwich.
Double-decker bologna sandwiches, yeah, I was about to say.
And those two themes, like, intersect because the whole film is that the family is being threatened by literal vegetarians that want to eat them.
Yeah.
And that he's basically found a way to make a cannibal horror film where the cannibals are vegetarians.
It's very odd too. And then there's the philosophical question of, if they're killing the humans and making them the plants, are they really vegetarians? There's a lot of there's a lot of depth to this, I think, that we're not getting into.
Claudio would agree with you.
Exactly. Yeah. Claudio was a genius. A secret genius.
Oh, man. Okay, I have a question, though, Shannon. What's happening in the opening scene of this? The bit where the trolls are, like, chasing... Just because he's telling a story, right?
Oh,
the Grandpa Seth is telling a story, but it's Ghost Grandpa
with the
Seth
with the freckles that are clearly drawn on.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Guy looked like Robin Hood or something.
I really don't understand how that fits in with the rest of the movie, or like why I don't.
Yeah, because we
gotta start a movie with something scary. Let's have dead grandpa.
Yeah, because then the mom comes in and is like, kid, what the fuck are you doing? And he's like, Grandpa Seth is reading me a story. And she's just like, Grandpa Seth is dead. You know this.
I also love her line, banish him from your mind. She tells her own son to banish his grandfather from his mind because he's passed. I'm like, holy hell, that was savage shit. One part that got me absolutely, like, I was losing my shit was they were actually building some suspense when the one dude that says the "oh my god" line, he gets turned into a plant. And he has before I do this, that guy had to stand in that plant thing for 14 hours. Straight. Yeah,
they used his shoes. They bolted his shoes to the plant.
They bolted I missed that.
Yeah, they said that in the documentary.
My black Converse high tops.
Oh my god, that's crazy. And then Claudio was like, he kept complaining, so I put the mouthpiece in his mouth.
Just like, oh my god, dude.
Claudio, oh my god. But anyway, so that scene when his friend finds him, it's actually kind of, it's still funny because it's Troll 2 and we're watching what we're watching.
Yeah.
But, he like takes the mouthpiece out and there's like green blood that comes out. I'm like, oh, that was kind of creepy and kind of cool.
It's like, ow.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, that was probably pretty painful. And then, so I'm like, you know what, there's kind of some suspense in this scene a little bit. Well done there, I guess. And then instantly the guy's like, dude, drag my pot really quick. And then the guy, they do a wide shot of him trying to drag the pot slowly out of the room. And it's the most funny, suspenseful thing that they just ruin any bit of, tension that was in that scene. And I was losing my mind because he's just yelling at his friend, too. He's like, you gotta go faster, man. And he can't move. And it's just... It's comedy gold.
Okay, yeah. We also got to, because speaking of those two characters, we got to talk about the
boys,
the weird homoerotic camping trip
every day of the week is for the boys on these guys.
Yeah, they the bit especially where they're all just hanging in the RV and they're like, okay, we got to get the girl to come hang out with us. And I was like, okay, this is this makes sense to me. Like, I understand this is like teenage boys doing their
Pie.
thing. But then the next scene is like three of them all in bed together, shirtless.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, what? Where something happened here?
Yeah. And they won't separate ever. The girlfriends, all the girlfriend requests is that it's just like, hey, could you just come for one weekend without your guy friends? That's it. That's all you have to do. One weekend. And the guy's like, yeah, I'll do that. No problem. Next thing you know, he's in the RV with this whole crew. Like, it's just like this guy cannot get away from his buddies. It's hilarious. They definitely have a crush on each other. There's some real love going on.
They're definitely all more interested in each other than they actually are in the girl.
Yet every single time that they talk, it's just like, where are the girls, man?
Yeah.
Where are all those hot girls?
Yeah. Like, none of their actions actually reflect any of the things that they're saying.
Yeah, exactly. None of them. They're also not they act, their character has this kind of jockey bro dialogue and whatever, but none of them look like that at all.
No,
like,
they're
they
all
don't
dorks.
have that. Yeah, they look kind of dorky and like, and it's just so funny that they're trying to do this like American Pie subplot, and then they have just and then there's that line that I guess just furthers the proof of this possible homoerotic undertones or whatever, which is when he says when she punches him in the balls and he's just like, "What are you trying to make me, a homo?" Which makes no sense at all. No, it's like,
and wait, what?
What still like?
What does she say?
My dad will cut off your little nuts and eat them, or something like that. It involves his little nuts. I think it's her dad. George Hardy's going to eat his little nut, cut him off, and she does this thing with her hand. And that's one thing in the documentary they specifically said she was uncomfortable saying that. So her and the male actor went to Claudio, and they were like, here we have something better, something more PG. And he's like, no, it's American. And then
yeah.
I love that was his response to everything.
Yeah, he's like, but I'm an American girl, wouldn't I know it? No, I know American.
No, someone says, I forget who says it in the documentary eventually, but someone says that Troll 2 feels like an American B movie that was made by aliens
and just tried their best.
Yeah, they watched, they found a bunch of American films and they were like, we're gonna make an American film.
Yeah,
and it really does feel like that when you watch it.
100%. Because you just
like a neural network.
Yeah. There's stuff being expressed in here, that's for sure. Which is better than I can say for some movies.
Yeah. Well, that was actually part of my little review. We'll get to the ratings still in a bit here, but it was kind of just like I sat there and I went, yes, this movie's bad objectively, but I was so much more entertained. I would watch this 100 times before I would watch like the new Kingsman. Or the new Transformers, or the, what I mean? Like, it's just, I find this at least entertaining, and I got something out of it, whether or not it was intentional,
right.
Especially with Best Worst Movie, because when you see that and you kind of see the humanity behind the film, where it's like all these people just trying their best, and some of them were in really tough spots in their life, and this was kind of an outlet in a sense too. It's pretty awesome actually when you really look at it.
I guess we'll get into this discussion because this is going to be the main crux of kind of Best Worst Movie and of the value in this kind of film in general. Which is what most people kind of talk about, because again, most people would kind of say that, hey, like
Claudio did too.
Yeah, there is a lot of entertainment here, and what the Best Worst Movie kind of captures is obviously the huge cult following that this film gained, where people are much more willing to watch something like this than they are.
Right.
They get a lot of
franchise.
They get a lot of enjoyment genuinely out of this, and I think the film eventually sums up in its closing statements kind of that, like, film especially is a very experiential medium, one where a lot of the time it's not the story, it's not necessarily the direction or the performances, it is a feeling that's going to get out of you. And the fact that this movie has obviously made so many people feel a certain way makes it a success in its own way,
for sure.
And that's kind of the argument that it makes. And Shannon, I imagine since you brought this on the show, you feel similarly.
Yeah, well, I think especially I do video essays, and one of the main things I've been working on is like researching parasocial relationships, which are relationships, one-way relationships with like a celebrity or a fictional character or whatever. And there is something beautiful in all these people coming together for this supposed, failure of a movie, but it has so much weirdness and creativity in it, and it was so sincerely put together. I'm kind of all over the place here, but there's a Doc Hammer, one of the guys who did the Venture Brothers, one of the showrunners. There's a quote of his I've always loved where he's talking about, like, he can handle a beautiful vision and he can handle a giant flaming disaster, but mediocrity is just horrible. Like, if something is forgettable or if it's something that's repeated forever. And Troll 2 definitely stands out. It means a lot to all these people, but there's something deeply sad when that guy, the store owner guy, says, like, the only moment in his whole life where he felt like he was happy to be himself was on stage in front of a bunch of people who don't even know him. or know anything about him. And George Hardy has this whole city of people who like love him, but for a while he's drawn to this sort of fake ironic love from these people. And I watched Troll 2 because I had seen the Red Letter Media's half in the bag on it like years ago, and I think it's Jay talks about it's like one of the best moments of realization he's ever seen caught on film, where George Hardy's like, what are these people doing here? And then he's like, wait, what am I doing here?
Yeah. That's
why am I so high on this? And then of course they end the movie with him saying, of course I do Troll 3. And it's like, oh, that's kind of dark and kind of sad.
Yeah, it's a great ending.
That's why Best Worst Movie is so good, because it kind of honestly explores these different aspects of these people who are, it is something beautiful, but it's also like, please don't let this be the best moment of your life. It's so much more to life than
I think maybe why they think that it is. I mean, I think if they dug deeper, especially, George, he at the end seems to realize that he truly does kind of love his life back home in a sense, like his dentistry and the people that respect him. He does still have a want for, a bit of that fame. Like you said, he said that he wanted to do part 3 if it goes down. But I do think that if they were to really think about it, I would hope that they would think that what they've done within their lives that isn't exactly related to Troll 2 was still worth it. But yeah, I get what you're saying. That the one guy that had that moment where he was like, being in Manhattan was my biggest accomplishment, just being praised.
It's really sad.
It's like that is because I mean, you're just seeing a guy that probably didn't have a lot of opportunity there, or even a lot of encouragement. So for people to give it to him, that was a pretty powerful moment to see. There was another one too that was kind of similar. It was the guy that plays the grandpa. He kind of had a similar vibe. Yeah, like he's like a hoarder now, and it seemed like he was like, for the most part, he said he frittered his life away. I think that's the way he put it. And yeah, that was pretty sad to see. But he also seemed like a man that was comfortable being alone and being by himself. I don't know. It seemed, because he even said himself he enjoyed that comfort, that coziness of his life too. He didn't want to be out there. I think that's why he didn't go to Manhattan with everybody. So,
but maybe he's at the weird outdoor thing at the Alamo.
He's at the Alamo one.
Right. You're right.
I don't know. It is very sad. I think he's dead now too. Which
that's a shame.
Because this movie's about 10 years old now.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. That I don't know. There's like a few different moments that could be like the saddest moment in Troll 2, but a good contender is him just being like, I frittered my life away. Although at least he's self-aware about it. I think the guy being like, this is the best moment of my life when a bunch of strangers. I mean, I'm not trying at all to like judge these people.
For sure.
That's not at all what I'm just saying. Like, wow, I wish your life had been happier, and I wish you liked yourself more. You don't seem that awful, and you really deserve something better than this weird thing you were briefly involved with.
Yeah.
And you didn't really like have anything to do with it creatively. It wasn't really you were just severely disturbed.
Yeah, because it
movie for a little bit.
It gets
and
into
then how it's the crowning achievement of your life. It's like, ooh.
Yeah, it gets into a bit of an interesting discussion that happens surrounding just most documentaries in general, and that is, are you in any way sort of like exploiting your subject? And I don't necessarily think that the kid is, because I feel like the kid is so deeply involved himself in bringing all of this back. But one thing, again, I don't think he expected was that I think he was a lot more ready for it than some of the people who he's asking to kind of jump back into this and discover this.
Yeah.
And you can't help but feel during some of those sad moments that there's like a critic colleague of mine, Jake Cole, described it that he feels watching this that even though you're seeing people who in a lot of ways have found success, and that the project they've been in has found success, that you can't help but feel like you're watching some sort of grotesque monkey's paw wish having become fulfilled. That there's a weird sort of dark side both to the fandom itself for it, that a lot of these people who are obviously ironically enjoying the film, that very quickly can turn into a more distanced exploitation, especially when you get the real people involved. And I do think that, to the film's credit, it does address this.
Yeah, for sure. I don't know. I don't want to say it left a sour taste in my mouth by any means, but I guess there was some, like the editing, how they introduced, was it Margot? How at the very end when they revealed the voice thing, I don't know if it was played for comedy, but it kind of was. And
it definitely was played.
And I mean, in a way, I'm not going to lie to you, I did find it a little funny because
it's amusing.
The timing of it is, well, that's why I mean, maybe they played it for comedy, right? I'm not sure.
It is played. I mean, I'm not saying it's being like horribly cruel to her necessarily, but it is played for comedy. I think if I was cutting it, if I had any control over it, I maybe, you can leave it her being like, I want to go away somewhere. I don't want to be here. That gets it across without really sort of like showcasing her mental illness and her problems to be laughed at. I think because there's a bit in that same scene, she's like, I just really want to, if I could do anything, I could. Because he's saying, like, what can we do to get you to come to this movie? And she takes it as, like, what can we do to help you? What do you want? She's like, I just want to go away somewhere where there are normal people and where I blah, blah. And it's like, you don't have to have her going, ee! It is fun. I mean, your natural reaction is to laugh at that. But it's like, if that were someone I cared about in my own life, it would be
that would be terrifying.
Right.
Whereas the scene where her mom's making a face and where we didn't talk about, George Hardy does this impression of her mom that's really funny. The old lady voice. It ain't gonna help you or whatever. So.
The coat. They're putting the coat on.
I don't think that's like evil to make fun of an angry old lady, even if she's old and disabled and all this stuff.
And the way he does it is pretty playful too.
Yeah, but whereas the scene, that's probably the only scene in the movie that I do feel is kind of exploitive and uncomfortable because they're playing it for that, and she clearly is very disturbed.
Yeah, definitely, and I guess I felt both
Which
ways
is
there. I felt like I laughed because I'm like, that is the way that they presented it was amusing, the timing and everything. It felt like an Office episode, honestly. But then I thought about it and I'm like, well, you didn't need to. You didn't need to throw that in there to make her look crazier than she already looked. I mean, I don't mean crazy is a hard word, but you know what I mean.
But yeah, and again, it does sort of just feel like the director of the documentary, the former child actor. Again, it does just really feel like he himself discovered this stuff, which is, and he feels like he's got to show it. But as Shannon pointed out, you really should have edited it differently in that case.
Just a bit. Yeah. It's really, I don't even think, including it wasn't the big thing. It was the way it was edited, because I think they're like, where's Margot? And then they're like, 2 days earlier.
Wacky.
And then, look how wacky Margot was. I'm like, okay, I get it, but it's a little distasteful.
Demons. Whoa, funny.
Right, exactly. Like she hears like screeching ghosts in her sleep. That's awesome.
And he is walking a fine line of walking like a tongue-in-cheek sort of like this is amusing and absurd and also deeply sad in its own respects. And he does, for sure. I feel like that's just, I guess, the one element where he doesn't walk the line as well as he does in other ones. Because the stuff with George Hardy that we talked about, where he goes to the conventions and you just watch this golden retriever like deflate in real time.
Where's my bone?
Yeah, and then as Shannon pointed out too, the ending of the film was one of my favorite bits of the documentary, where he asks him and you get to hear him ask the question like, would you star in Troll 3? And he's like, oh, hell yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Which, by the way, I would 100% see. Although I don't think you can capture the magic. Like if we were to...
Apparently he's in...
Because I think
he's trying to put together Goblin 2 right now, which is... Oh, wait. It's in post-production.
At the end of the documentary, they did say that he's trying to make Troll 2 Part 2 or whatever.
Yeah, well, this might be it. It might be coming out 2018, apparently.
Oh, my God.
Goblin 2.
Dude, okay, here's the thing. I will watch the hell out of that. But I almost feel like it's going to be one of those really disappointing kind of things, like Anchorman 2. You know what I mean? Like you just can't capture the magic that happened in the first one. I mean, Anchorman was an intentionally funny film, but I just mean it seems like when you try to, capitalize on something like this, it's just, I don't think it's going to work again, because this was like lightning in a bottle. It was totally accidental, the fact that this became so good that it's, or so bad that it's good, so I don't think they
cynical
could redo
recreation never really does benefit.
Yeah, because they're gonna be self-aware now. Like George Hardy, this whole time is gonna be like
he's gonna be
probably
trying to be
smiling the whole
now,
time. Yeah, he's gonna. I don't
like a
think,
dog.
Yeah, exactly. He'd probably be like straight up a dog.
To be fair, he's got great teeth.
Oh hell yeah! he shows it throughout the. I don't think there's like a scene in that movie where he's not smiling. Honestly, I can't
grin.
think of him with a stern face. It's crazy.
Well, I think that'll be it for talking about Troll 2 and Best Worst Movie. This is, Shannon, where we enter the reductive rating round, which is basically where it's exactly what it sounds like. We take away all the nuance, all the words that we just spent discussing these films in depth, and we reduce the films to a number between 1 and 5 that best represents how you feel. Now, everyone is going to have their own rating system coming to this, and this is a hard one, especially for me, I guess, because my rating system, I have a very practiced style of analysis working as a critic for however many years it's been. Right. But this defies every sort of rubric I could have possibly created, and not that cinema is math in any way either, but for real. I can't analyze what that motif means. I can't, it's just, it's a totally different experience. So, we're going to see how this goes, but we feel like, so I feel like I'm not, usually I go first in reductive rating round, but I am going last this time. So okay. Shannon, let's get your ratings between 1 and 5. And if you want to, why you came to those ratings.
Well, I mean, okay.
And we're doing both films.
To me, as like a critic and, whatever, it's like I'm not trying to do any kind of objective analysis on every single, I think it's important to say that.
And you really can't.
Both really high ratings.
Yeah.
No, you can't. I mean, life is subjective. Our consumption is subjective. Some people want to pretend it's not. Whatever, they're wrong. It's very subjective. And looking at these two movies as like, what have they brought to my life? What kind of experiences I had compared to any other movie I've seen in my whole life? I would give them a 5 out of 5 because I have seen Troll 2 twice in theaters, once on 35.
That would be
both times were amazing.
Yeah.
And I just today, one of my best friends, my friend Devin, watched Best Worst Movie like last night, and he was messaging me the whole time and was like getting upset at certain parts and laughing at other parts. And it's such a great, cool thing about it's such a great examination of like filmmaking and of art and of expression and of humanity and of real love and then ironic parasocial love. And it's also simply and sincerely put together. Like, I don't know if everyone would like Troll 2. Like, there's a scene where all the people in Alabama watch it and they're really confused. But I think anyone can enjoy Best Worst Movie. It's not at all insular. It's not, any person who can, speaks English and likes watching movies can get the appeal of that.
For sure.
And I think that's really cool, too, because I care a lot about accessibility. I don't know if it's my favorite documentary. It's really high up there. Yeah. I just think it's really special. And I also, The Room was mentioned. I think The Disaster Artist is really gross for a lot of reasons. And I think Tommy Wiseau is pretty clearly, in some ways, kind of controlling and abusive. And I love going and seeing The Room. It's fun, but I feel really uncomfortable about all the praise and attention he gets, that none of it's critical. Whereas I can watch this and not feel guilty. I don't think Claudio was particularly crappy to the women or tried to ruin anybody's career or whatever. I don't feel, he's an asshole, but I don't feel uncomfortable. And he doesn't seem abusive, whereas Tommy Wiseau is, I would not want to meet Tommy Wiseau or interact with him at all.
Yeah, I was going to say, I actually, unfortunately I have interviewed Tommy Wiseau. The dude is odd. That's basically all I can say about that. The one line from our interview that I always think of is when, because I approached the interview, I was like, look, I'm not going to be mean to this dude. I genuinely, I've been asked professionally to do this, and so I'm gonna approach him like I would approach any other director interview that I've done, with Alex Garland or anything. Yeah. And I was just like, okay, I was like, hey man, so you have obviously a very unique artistic voice. Tell me, talk to me about that. And he was just like, yeah, as you can hear, I have a very distinct voice.
Oh. Oh no!
And I was like,
oh no!
I was
so
just
Tommy.
I was red alert. I was red alert. Like I just moved straight on to the next one.
Don't even bother. Yeah.
No, but yeah, I kind of feel similarly as you do about the Disaster Artist. I think that I enjoyed what the screenwriters did with that film, and I think that a better film would definitely tackle. I mean, I think about this about every biopic, basically. Yeah. That if you're afraid to tackle the icky side of the person you're talking about, like, why are you making a movie about them? Like, I just watched Greatest Showman the other week, and I was like, why even make a movie about P.T. Barnum if you're not going to address the fact that he was like a really kind of grotesque grifter, and he really, misled these people in a lot of ways, and profited off of them, which the film does not address in any capacity. It's just like, oh, he's given them a helping hand. He's
whoa. I will say too, I very recently met Greg Sestero, and he was really nice. I didn't really interact with him. I went to a Disaster Artist screening, and I got my copy of the book signed.
Nice.
And did not stay for the movie because I had seen it and I don't like it. And he did the Q&A and everything before. And the guys running it were like, "Oh, you're gonna stay, right? I'm like, I've already seen it. I have the book here."
Oh, Shannon,
he seemed very nice and normal, and like he's been trapped in this, and he might as well take advantage of it.
This is the longest reductive rating round ever. But Shannon, I have to ask you: have you ever seen Ed Wood?
I haven't. I know
because I much more enjoy Ed Wood to the Disaster Artist, and Ed Wood also has the biopic issue of it not addressing Ed Wood's alcoholism and a couple other things that he did that was wrong. But what the movie does really get right is the magic of genuine, pure expression of someone. And by all intents and purposes, otherwise, Ed Wood was a pretty generous collaborator when it came to his actual on-screen time. It's just, outside of working, he wasn't necessarily the best dude. Jamie, though, your ratings.
Okay. I'm going to just start. I'll start with best worst movie because that's easier for me to rate.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a 4 out of 5 for best worst movie.
Nice.
Some of it was like, I think some of it was a little, I don't know how, the approach to it, like some of the audio was a little weak in parts. I felt it could have been a little bit more just professionally done technically. But it doesn't really matter to me in a sense because like what we're following is
honestly I kind of like that it was haphazardly.
Yeah, in a way it works. I mean, it's Troll 2, so I guess it kind of works too. So it really didn't bother me. That was just something I did notice. Just following these people was so fascinating after you see Troll 2 and question life. Just watching all of these characters kind of come to terms with their ironic fame and watching Hardy go through his journey of kind of like, oh, I love being famous, but I don't know if I want to be famous for this specifically. He's in such a mixed bag. There was some real devastating moments with certain cast members that were, pretty sad, but it just brought more humanity to the film as well. So yeah, it was really good. I'm gonna give that one a 4 out of 5. As for Troll 2, I gave on Letterboxd I gave it a 3. I gave it a 3 out of 5. Now that isn't because I think it's not because I was so entertained. Like if I was just rating this thing, completely subjectively, I guess I probably could give it a 4, honestly. But I don't know. I'm still in this
something holds you back.
Yeah, I'm still in this weird mindset where I don't know how to approach films when I rate them like this. I do like The Room. These are the only 2 movies I've really seen that are the so bad it's good or whatever. You
got to go down some Ed Wood rabbit holes at some point.
Oh, is Ed Wood so
you
bad it's good?
You gotta watch Things.
Yeah.
No, not the film, but the film is about Ed Wood, and Ed Wood's actual movies were god awful. But he had such a great time making them, man, and all the people were so nice who made them, and you're just like,
okay. Yeah, I'll have to look into that for sure.
Ed Wood was the Disaster Artist before they actually made the Disaster Artist.
Oh, okay, okay. Now, the Disaster Artist, I gave that one a 3 when I watched it. I thought there was it just wasn't truthful enough, to be quite honest. It didn't dive into the right things. Best Worst Movie definitely dove into all the right things. And then the Troll 2, it's so entertaining. I'm having a tough time.
You're gonna agonize over it.
I'm gonna give it a 3 for now. Let it sink a little. But I have a strong feeling it could go up to a 4.
I feel pretty similarly because having watched both of these for the first time,
it's weird, and I'm still getting used to it. But it's top tier. Like the 3 comes from like a objective, like this bad movie could have been a 1, just it didn't entertain me. It was objectively bad. But the 3 is like just
all the entertainment
top. Yeah, exactly. It's the top bad, So I don't know. It's hard for me to explain it.
Yeah, I feel pretty similarly. I'm gonna give Troll 2 a 3. I feel like just for me, again, I feel like this though, and I'm gonna qualify this entirely with this is just a me thing. Yeah, this is entirely that. I have never gotten watching films like this for the entertainment, and I honestly, watching Best Worst Movie made me wish that I had. I wished I was one of the people who went to these screenings and was like, I'm so into this, I love it, I love every second. But for me, like those movies are like just the movies that I genuinely think are the best movies. We actually watched, for next week's show, we watched Heat in a theater this week. And like that for me, like I wish the reaction I had to Heat, which is just pure like ecstatic joy, I wish that experience that I had for that, for example, applied to Troll 2 like it seems to do for so many other people.
See, I think
this movie is
if
about.
I were to see it though in theater with
in the 35 millimeter,
and people are like going at it and laughing their asses off and stuff, I mean, I get it. I totally get it. It's when I start to rate it. That's when I don't know how to feel about it anymore, because it's just
the
so
theater
weird.
Experience vibe. I feel like would be very beneficial to this film.
Yeah,
because sitting in a room with a bunch of sweaty people who are all having a good time is honestly a much better sounding thing than I just made it sound.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give Troll 2 a 3, and I'm actually also going to give Best Worst Movie a 3, and that for me only comes from. I don't even know. It's just the way that I feel. Ratings for me are more of a feeling thing than they are like an analysis thing.
Oh, okay.
And watching both these movies, that's just kind of how I felt about them. But I do feel like
was there something that was lacking in Best Worst Movie? I'm just.
Do you know what? The way you guys have described it has made it better for me. The way that we've kind of dove into some of the more sadness. I feel like I didn't feel that while I was actually watching the film.
You didn't feel it when you saw a man say, "I frittered my life away."
Yeah. No, but do you know what? Do you know what? Here's the thing. I did feel it, but I felt it less on. Like, I felt it more for Margot, which I felt was less the movies doing than it was her as a subject, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I do feel similar to Jamie in that rewatching these films with these things that we've talked about in mind, I could definitely see myself going up on both of these films.
Like, I kind of want to show people Troll 2.
I honestly feel bad that I watched these films like right before we recorded, because I feel like my ratings would be different if we talked about it in like a week. But I watched both of these movies just like back to back over the last 2 days.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's going to be it for this week's episode. Shannon, thanks so much for coming on. If you have anything to plug, this is the place to do it.
I do. I am on Twitter at Plenty of Alcoves and also at Strucci Movies. And I have a YouTube channel called Strucci Movies. And if you look up So You Want to Be a Film Nerd or Shannon Strucci, or it's not hard to find it. I also work sometimes with Age Bomber Guy. We have a video out in a series called Scanline, and we're working on something else that will hopefully be out this month. A secret video that I can't talk about. It's gonna be really interesting. I'll say that. But
cool. Well, I'm excited to check that out, and also make sure to check out, if you go and check out Shannon's YouTube over at Strucci Movies, check out her Hannibal video, because as a huge Hannibal fan, diehard, yes, the Hannibal TV show, one of my favorite TV shows of all time. Shannon did a really good dissection of that film and the central relationship in it. Nice. So definitely give a look to that one. Thanks so much for coming on. As always, I'm Josh Lewis. You can find me at the Josh L. Jamie.
I'm Jamie Miller at Jamie Miller ACAS ACAS.
Once again, guys, if you're listening on iTunes, it would be really awesome if you guys could go over there and give us a good old rating and review.
Please do.
And for patrons, all of you who are subscribing, you guys have a brand new episode coming to you guys just next week, and that's going to be a special episode of one of my all-time favorite films, Heat. First time we're talking about Michael Mann. I'm very excited about it. For anyone who follows me on Twitter, you know exactly why. And we're going to be pairing it with Catherine Bigelow's Point Break, starring Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, which is a hell of a lot of fun. So patrons, you guys can look forward to that episode next week. For free listeners, you will see us again in 2 weeks, where we're going to be having a special guest on to talk Cruising and Vice Squad, two sort of hard-boiled...
I don't know what those are at all.
Yeah, honestly, I haven't seen either of them yet either, but they look like some pretty heavy exploitation.
Beautiful.
So we're going to be getting into that. Thanks so much again, guys, for listening. Keep it sleazy.
Keep it sleazy.